we're constantly moving the goalposts. If I could only make this much money, if I could only have this much time in my week, if I could only, and all these if I could onlys usually are things you end up achieving at some point in time, and it's not enough. What really tends to work is looking back on the progress allows you to remember how far you've come from where you started. You often talk about the difficult middle. What happens when the difficult middle lasts for years?
We set a goal, we say, let's do it. We are often very excited. Okay? At the beginning, we are super excited. We are going to do it. If the goal has an end, okay, some of them do. Okay, I don't know. Maybe you have like a workout and you're about to finish it. Okay, you had some saving goal and you're about to hit it. And toward the end, we see again the increase in motivation. In the middle, any action that you take feels like a drop in the bucket. Okay, it doesn't feel like it's doing much, and like the goal is not on your mind, and this is when people kind of lose their motivation. So, well, we want to, as far as much, sorry, as much as we can, get rid of the middles. Okay, we want to make middles short. Basically, we want to take like these lifelong goals and make them sufficiently short so that there is less of a middle. Many times we do it intuitively. We want to exercise for life, but most people have a weekly exercise goal, okay, or a daily exercise goal, and so there is less of a middle. Okay, we want to save for old age, and we want to have retirement savings, which is a very, very long-term goal, particularly for a young person just starting their career. Will we make it into an annual goal? Okay, yeah. What is it that I want to achieve this year? Salespeople, okay, yeah, that's their job. They want to always sell, okay, but they try to set a monthly sales goals, and anything that allows for less of a middle would mean that the next action that you take, the next achievement, seems to be moving the needle. Okay, that there is a sense of progress. We have to feel like there is progress as people. We have to feel like we are going somewhere. If we don't feel the progress, we find it hard to stay motivated.
Yeah, I was just in an interview I did last week on time. Um, the We were talking, and the guest was referencing reading War and Peace, and she had said that she always wanted to read War and Peace, and it seemed so daunting, such a big book that she would, you could start it and then it wouldn't finish. So she broke it up into small bites, and she read every single day, and I think she read it in X number of days, maybe it was a year or I forget the exact layout. And then I referenced the Bible, the same thing. I broke it up into 15 to 20-minute increments on a daily basis. There was always enough time to do 15 to 20 minutes, but there isn't enough time to once you start it and then you look at how far you have to go. When you focus on that end, that middle becomes so daunting. And the same thing with diet or exercise. There's no result in the very beginning, and it can feel so frustrating. But if I control what I can control, which is just showing up every day, and I do this now, if I can't get the 20 to 30 minutes or an hour in that I want, sometimes I get 10 minutes in. And just getting that 10 minutes helps me move the needle versus trying to do all of it every time the way that I intended from the beginning or the end.
So can I refer to a few things that you said? You said a
Please.
lot there, and I have comments on everything here. I loved it. Okay,
Great.
first with books, you just described my problem with Kindles. I love to read books on my Kindle because I can carry it everywhere and it's always on me. But it's really hard to monitor progress. I have no idea how long the book is, and I don't know, am I making any progress? And so, I, this is a technological challenge. Like someone has to figure out how to give readers a sense of progress when they don't have the physical book. Okay, uh, you know. Uh, then you describe more generally how we need to feel like there is progress, like we move the needle. One strategy is to cut the middle short. Another strategy is to be more thoughtful in terms of how you monitor progress. Do you look back or do you look forward? Okay, let's say there are 10 steps you need to take, okay, 10 chapters you need to read. I don't know, 10 purchases before you get this free reward. Okay, 10 meetings you need to make before you can submit a report at work. Do you look back or do you look forward? Okay, what we find is that at the beginning, and for people that are unsure about whether they will ever meet the goal, it's better to look back. Okay. It's not that I still have so much to do, it's that I already did 10%, I already did 20%. Okay. I'm making progress. Once you feel confident, or if there is a 50% point, you have reached it, this is where it's better to monitor progress in terms of what is left. You are 4 steps from completing the goal. Okay, yeah, 2 steps to completing the goal, and this is more motivating.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that I have um, I know Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain, and they talk about when you're trying to achieve success, it's much better to focus on the gain than it is the gap, because what we do as leaders, as athletes, as educators, whatever it may be, we're constantly moving the goalposts. If I could only make this much money, if I could only have this much time in my week, if I could only, and all these if I could onlys usually are things you end up achieving at some point in time, and it's not enough. And so what really tends to work, to your point, is looking back on the progress allows you to remember how far you've come from where you started. And I do this all the time, and I struggle with it, to be honest with you, because I'm always a visionary mindset. I'm thinking into the future constantly. So I want to make everything just a little bit better, including myself. So very often I will force myself to look back on where I was at this point last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and just to visualize it, just remember what it felt like, what I thought about, what I was worried about, what my family was going through, whatever it may be, and it does seem to make such a big difference. So I love that progress over the future can be a great way to actually achieve our goals.
Yeah, yeah. You also bring up another interesting finding in research on motivation, which is some people, or all of us sometimes, we never quite get there. Okay, we never quite reach everything that we wanted to reach, and this is by design. And our mind always generates new things. Okay, and so basically every time we reach something, we are already thinking about the next thing that we could reach. We're not never quite happy where we are. This has advantage in terms of keeping us working, keeping us making progress, but it has disadvantage in terms of just being happy with what you have achieved. And so let's navigate this tension between always getting something done, okay, and celebrating things that we did get done.
Yeah, the older I get, so we talked about how I use that life model to balance to focus on the goals that I want to achieve. I also use it for overwhelm, but something I've used it more in the latter part of my life is patience. So just because something's written down doesn't mean it needs to be now. And this is me in my late 40s versus me in my 30s, and it's a significant difference of mindset for me, is that okay, it can still be a goal, but I can let it come into my world versus forcing it or pushing it or being hungry for it. And there are times where I think, and I'm sure there's research and validity to these concepts, but the reality is I just know from a personal perspective, if I can focus on a little bit more on the present state, which is easier as we get older, I think, just a little bit, because you're so anxious and worried and uncomfortable at what life might become when you're young. That as I've gotten older, a little bit of patience is helpful, but I don't give up on things. I just soften the timeline a little bit. Maybe I'm shortening the middle, as you say.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just actually focusing a little bit more on being patient and present versus focus so much on what I could be doing into the future.
Yeah, you're doing a few things here, which is really fascinating. Okay, you are describing that with age, people become better at motivation, at self control, at being patient. There is a clearly developmental effect here. We see that what is very hard for teenagers and people in their 20s is no problem for people in their 40s. They are more patient. Okay? As for living in the presence, it really there's an interesting tension, which is almost like the paradox of motivation and self-control, that if you really are always pursuing some future benefits, then you spend your life waiting for something that will only happen later. Okay, that if we push it to the extreme, okay, you never, if I can use the marshmallow metaphor, you never eat the marshmallow. Okay, you
Right.
always wait for some two marshmallows that will come later. Okay, and so what we learn, and partially when we age, or if we decide to put the effort, then hopefully earlier than later, we learn to balance between living full life, okay, being intrinsically motivated, if I can introduce another concept, feeling satisfied and enjoying what we currently have, while also being patient and making progress towards something that will come in the future. We definitely don't want to sacrifice the present, okay? But we do want to be patient because certain things will only come later.
Yeah, I think that impatience to some extent was part of my motivation when I was building, like that the ability to push through no matter what was something great in my youth. As I've gotten older, what you find is you can't run at that pace. It's like sprinting miles. When you sprint miles, you'll exhaust yourself and you'll never be able to run at that pace. But when you're an endurance runner, you learn to slow down, find your rhythm, find your breath, and I think to some extent we all go through some of that. Maybe some of us achieve it earlier than others. I have always struggled a little bit with patience and with being quiet and staying still and waiting. But I find that bigger goals, you have to make incremental decisions to move towards them, but you can't force them or they won't happen. And so it's not a never eating the marshmallow mentality. It's more of a I I don't care when I eat the marshmallow as long as I get to eat the marshmallow.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's three or four marshmallows and they've gotten a lot smaller. It used to be 20 marshmallows. Now there's three or four, and we're focusing on achieving them, but the time can be a little elongated. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.